Having a recorded lecture is all right. Now the first thing about factorization is that there is in total three types of factorization in O-level mathematics 4024. First is called two-term factorization. Second is the three-term factorization, and if you are able to understand the three-term factorization, you will be able to understand the four-term quite easily. Now in two-term factorization you have two terms. By two terms, what does it mean? Having two terms, it's like 2x plus 4. This will be called two terms, right? Two terms will not look like 2x plus 4x, because then they will add up together as 6x and it wouldn't be a two term anymore. So a different variable maybe, or a variable and a number without a variable maybe. This is what we call a two term. All right. Now in two term factorization, there are two things that you have to deal with. One is common, where you have to just take common between two terms, and the second one is identity, where there is a formula that is being applied. Now, for the identity, there is this very simple formula, that is a square minus b square is equals to a plus b and a minus b. Now, let's have some examples of two term first, because it's very easy. Like if you have a 2x plus 4 written over here, so what you can take a common as, you can see that the table is being common between two numbers, like 4 and 2 both come in the same table. So we just need to write it as 2x plus 2. All right. Now, before I continue, understand this one thing. This is very important for you guys to understand, that what is the basic meaning of factorization? What does factorization actually means? Factorization means to close in brackets. This is what it means. If the question is asking you to factorize anything, it is basically asking you to close it in bracket. Factorize never asks to solve, because factorization cannot be solved. If anything is needs to be solved, so it's either a linear equation, it is either expansion, simplification, something like that, that can be solved. Factorization does not mean to solve. Factorization means to close in brackets. You will notice down one thing in the questions of factorization, that even if you try, it cannot be simplified, or it cannot be solved. It won't be simplified, it won't be solved, it will only be factorized, which means that it will only be closed inside the brackets. Now, even if you feel like it's a little difficult right now, don't worry, it's not. Now, if we move to another example for this two term common factorization, where we just have to take commons. So let's see another example. Let's say you have a question that says 2x squared plus 4x. So in this, you need to see in between the whole two terms that what exactly is common between them. So you have this number as common, that's 2. And then you also have x as common between both of them. So when in terms of table, in terms of numerical value, you can say that 2 is common between them. And in terms of variable, you can say that x is common in between them. Now, inside the bracket, what is going to be left? Over here, you had two x's basically, because x square means x times x. If one x has been taken outside, so still you will have an x remaining inside the bracket. I will tell you how to verify it as well. Now, you will be left with a x plus 2. All right, this is how the common is going to look like. Now, wait. How can you verify that you have taken your common correctly? How can you claim that this is the right answer? What you can do is that you can quickly multiply this number with the bracket again and see if you're getting this or not. If you're getting this, it means that you have done everything correctly. So 2 times x will give you a 2x. 2 times 2 will give you a 4. It means yes, you have done it correctly. You can do this with the second question as well. If you want to see that if this answer is correct or not, so just multiply this 2x with the x, so you will have a 2x square. Just multiply this 2x with the 2, so you will have a 4x. It means that you have done it correctly. Now, the common thing is usually there in the two terms only. So it's not like that you will be having three terms for that, for which you have to take common of. It's mostly of the middle term breaking, three term factorization that we will be just looking at in a minute. Now let's just have another example of it, which is going to be a slightly different. See, if I have a 5x squared plus 3x, sorry, 3y cube. If I have these two numbers and the question mentions to try, there's nothing common between these two numbers. The thing is, there is nothing common between the numbers. So always remember in this case, if there is nothing common, you can simply write it as 1 as a common between them. Because the question, if it is saying factorize, so you know the meaning of factorize. It is asking you to close it in bracket. And if you cannot find a way to close it in bracket, so you can just take 1 as common. Since there is nothing common between these two terms, so at least 1 is common. So you can write 1, and inside the bracket, you can write 5x squared plus 3y cube like this. And this is going to be your answer because you did your job. There was nothing common. You just took 1 as common. And even if you open the bracket, so obviously it's going to be same because you will multiply the things inside the bracket with 1. So obviously the answers are going to be same. Now let's move to the identity ones. Now, the another two term, it looks very much similar to these two terms that we have seen for the commons. It looks very much similar, but there is one slight difference and there is one slight thing that you need to notice. All right. Now, let me write this thing. 2x squared plus 4. All right. Now, if you see this question and if you see that the question is asking you to factorize it. All right. So how are you going to rule out that either you have to take a common or either you have to apply this formula on it? What is going to give you an assurance that in what way you are exactly supposed to solve this question? All right. In this thing, the most important thing that you need to see that if the numbers are a perfect square or not. The first thing that you need to see that are these numbers, like both of them, not one, both of them, are they a perfect square or not? If they are not a perfect square, so it cannot be applied or sent into the formula. You will have to only apply the common rule on it. You will just take a common in it and you'll just write the answer, which is going to look like 2x squared plus 2. All right. So the very first thing that you guys need to note down, if you need to identify or between two term questions, and you need to understand that what exactly are you going to apply on it. Either you are going to take a common with it or either you're going to apply a formula on it. So the first thing that you need to see that if these two numbers are a perfect square or not. 4 is a perfect square number, it is the square of 2, but 2 is not a perfect square number. All right. So it cannot happen. Now another example. If you have a question which says that 4x squared plus, let's say, 9. All right. Now, this again cannot be put into the formula y. Please note that down, try to understand that. These two numbers are square, right? 4 is a square of 2, 3 is a square of 9. Oh, sorry, 9 is a square of 3. And this variable is having a square on it as well, which means that these both sides are a perfect square. This is a perfect square because even the number is a square and even the variable is having a square on it. And this number is a square of 3 as well. Everything is perfect, right? But if you look at the formula says that two numbers are not only supposed to be a square, they are also supposed to have a negative sign in the middle. So if the question does not have a negative sign in the middle, so there is this just one formula that you have to apply. There are no two formulas. There is no a square plus b squares formula. There is just only this a square minus b square formula. So even if there is no negative sign in the middle, even then you cannot put it into the formula. For in the formula, shortly, just understand this, that you need to have your question exactly in this way. The both numbers should be a square number. Both numbers, if they are having a variable, they should have a square on that variable. And in between those two numbers, it has to be a negative sign always because in the formula there is a negative sign. Now, let's just have this question as it is, and let's just change this sign in the middle as negative sign. Now it does compel with the formula completely now. Both numbers are square. and there is a negative sign in the middle as well. It means that it is being completely fulfilled according to the requirement of the formula. Now, how is it going to look like? How am I going to show it completely as a square minus b square? Let's have a look. So 4 is a square of 2, 9 is a square of 3, and the variable also has a square of on it, which means that I can write 2x whole square minus 3 square. I can write it like this. This is very important. Why? Because now it looks entirely like the formula a square minus b square. So I have to change it into the identity. First, I have to evaluate in the first step, I have to evaluate that either it is capable of being changed into the identity or not by seeing that both numbers are perfect square and there's a negative sign. And after I have checked that yes, they are compatible. So I need to then convert them into this form. Why? Because I need to show them exactly like this a square minus b square. So I'll just put everything inside and I'll put a square on both of them and I'll have a negative sign in the middle. So this is how it's going to be look like this. And once it is looking like this, a square minus b square, I just need to open it like this. All right. If we look at the formula, this inside the bracket represents a, this inside the bracket represents b. All right. And the formula was a square minus b square is equals to a plus b and a minus b. So you just need to write it like this. Since this is your a, 2x, so you can write 2x plus 3 and you can write 2x minus 3. This is how you're gonna write the answer of this question. Now, even if you're not sure, like let's just say you have this weird thought that I might have done something wrong. So I told you that factorization is basically converting things into the bracket. It is not about solving. All right, it is not about solving. Factorization basically gives you an answer as a question. Like if you look at the question of the factorization, like this is 4x minus 9, you cannot do anything about it. You cannot solve it. You cannot simplify it. You cannot expand it. You cannot do anything about it. Why? Because this is an answer. An answer is in the most simplified form. This is an answer. What you are doing over here is that you are actually creating a question out of it. Now, this question you have seen where we were doing the questions of expansion, right? And if you multiply these two brackets now, so you're going to have this as your answer. So basically in factorization, the question of factorization is basically the answer and you create a question out of it. So it might be getting a little complicated. So let's just follow the steps. All right, let's have another example. If I write another question as, let's say, let's use some bigger numbers because that's what they do. Now, if I write 49 y square, a negative and a 1 after it. So don't get yourself confused because 1 is a square number. 1 is a square number of itself. Sometimes we get confused that it's a 1, it's not a square number. We need to have a square number perfectly. But even if they have given you a 1 out of there, so still it works completely. Now, again, we just need to first identify, yes, 49 is a square of 7. Why it does have a square on it? 1 is there having a square on it as well, and there's a negative sign in the middle. So it means that everything is being there as per the requirement for the formula. Now we just need to write it as the identity. So it's going to look like 7y square minus 1 with a whole square outside it. All right. This thing inside, this is our a, this is our b, right? Because it looks like a square minus b square. We're just going to open it in the formula. That's going to look like 7y plus 1 and 7y minus 1. All right. Even if you get some bigger numbers for this, even if you get some bigger numbers for this, like some bigger square numbers, 121 minus 25. So just need to make sure that you first evaluate it completely that either the number is a square number or not. So 121 is a square of 11. So it can be written as 11 square and 25 is a square of 5. Again, a square minus b square. It can be opened as a plus b and a minus b. And our a is 11x, b is 5. So a plus b and a minus b. This is going to be the answer for it. All right, I will be sending you a PDF, so don't worry about anything. If you still cannot understand anything, you will get a PDF of it after the class. Now, let's have a look at 3 term. Now, I'm sure that you guys have understood the meaning of two term and three term factorizations, because two terms were like this, where you have two terms and a negative and a positive sign in between, which could not be added or subtracted with one another. Any of the question of factorization is not going to be added, subtracted, simplified, or solved by any chance. All right. Now, in three term factorization, there are a couple of steps that you guys need to note down. First, let me write a question for it. All right. Now, this is how a three term factorization question looks like. In a three term factorization question, you will have one, two, three terms, and you can see it clearly that these numbers cannot be added or subtracted with one another because they are having entirely different variables or no variable at all. Now, there are three steps that you need to note down for simplifying or to factorizing the three terms. The first step that you need to note down is the very first thing we do is that we first multiply the first number with the last number. We are only talking about the numbers over here. Don't multiply x as well. First number with the last number. So once I multiply the first number with the last number, so what am I going to get? I'm going to get a 10. So step number two is basically saying that find the factors. Find factors of what? Of what you have got from the first step. All right, so we have 10 that I received from the first step. So I'm going to just find the factors of it. Factors means that in which table 10 comes in. So the very first table it comes in is 1, obviously. All right. Then it comes in a table of 2, 2 times 5, or either 5 times 2, which means the same. We're just going to repeat it again. So these are the factors of 10. It comes in 1 stable, it comes in 2 stable, it comes in 5 stable, it comes in itself as well. All right. Now, the third step says that with the help of factors, break the middle term, which we call middle term breaking. With the help of factors only. This is very important. With the help of factors only, with nothing else, but with the factors only. What are the factors? These are the factors. All right. Where did we got the factors from? We got the factors from this number. Where did this number come from? We multiplied the first number with the last number. All right. Now, with the help of factors means that I have this middle number is 7. This middle number is 7. So in the factors, I need to see that either if I add or subtract these two terms in the factors, so either am I going to get a 7 or not. So if I take this 1 and 10, so if I add them 1 and 10, so I'm going to get an 11, no 7, right? If I subtract these two, 1 and 10, so I'm going to get a 9, still no 7, right? If I'm going to work out the second factors, so if I add this 2 and 5, so I can get a 7, right? And if I subtract them, so I can get a 3. You can either subtract the factors or you can either add the factors just in order to break this middle term that you have in the three term factorization. Now, since we know that the break has been found, it is 2 plus 5, 7 that came from the factors of the number that we got by multiplying the first term with the last term. All right. Now, we're just going to expand the middle term. We're just going to break the middle term as 2x plus 5x plus 2x plus 5. It is middle term breaking. So we are only breaking the middle term. We are not doing anything with the first or the last term. Now, after breaking the middle term, the next step you do is you take common between the first two and the next two terms. Taking common between them is going to give you numbers are not common, only x is common. So inside the bracket, you will be left with a 2x. Why? Because there were two x's over here. It was a square. So one came outside and one still will remain inside. That is why 2x is there. Now, what is left is 5. Now, have a look at the second one. 2x plus 5. Nothing common, right? I told you if there is nothing common, you just take 1 as common. So if I take 1 as common, so it is going to be like 2x plus 5. Now, the most important thing about middle term factorization is that when you come at this step, where you have taken the common between the first two and the next two, you just make sure that these two brackets are entirely same. If these two brackets are not entirely same, it means that you have done something wrong. In the steps above, you have done something wrong, or you have either done something wrong in these steps. If you would have done everything correctly, so these two brackets are always going to be same. They are not going to be different. Even the signs inside them are not going to be different. The numbers and the signs are supposed to be same. And the last step is quite simple. You just write one of the two common brackets, that is 2x plus 5, just one of the two common brackets, and a bracket for the elements that are left outside, which is going to look like x plus 1. This is how you're going to factorize a three-term factorization. All right. Now let's have a look at another example of it. Let me write one more question for you guys. So question number 2 is like all right, guys. This is question number 2. Again, we're going to follow the same steps that I told you the first one. First, we're going to multiply the first and last number. All right. Multiplying first and last number is going to give me a 21. 3 times 7 is going to be a 21. Second step says that find the factors of 21. So there is only this one factor of 21, that is 3 times 7, right? Or 7 times 3 or 3 times 7 means the same, which means that 3 and 7 is the only number that I'm going to get. Now it's quite simple because if I add 3 and 7, so I get a 10, which is the middle number, which means that I can simply break the middle term as 3x squared plus 3x plus 7x plus 7. 3 plus 7 is 10. Now, the next step is we just take the common between the first two and the last two terms, which is going to look like 3x, and inside the bracket I will have a x plus 1, and in the second one I have 7 as common, so 7 will come outside and inside the bracket will be x plus 1. Now I have these two brackets entirely same. It means that everything has been done correctly. We're just going to write common, the one of the two common brackets, that is x plus 1, and then 3x plus 7, 3x plus 7 as the second one, and this is going to be your answer.